In the vast, unforgiving expanse of the American West, where the sun beat down on dusty trails and fortunes were won and lost with the turn of a card, there lived a man named Silas. He was a widower, weathered by years of hardship and etched with the deep lines of solitude. Silas knew the sting of loss, the hollow ache of an empty home, and the quiet desperation that clung to the edges of a lonely life. He had once known the warmth of a loving wife, the laughter of children echoing through his small cabin. But time, as it often does, had taken its toll, leaving him adrift in a sea of memories and regret. Now he found himself drawn to the town's weekly auction, a place where dreams went to die, and hopes were often traded for the bare necessities of survival. The auction was a spectacle of human misery and economic desperation, a harsh reflection of the times. People came seeking opportunity, a chance to improve their lot or simply to survive another day. Silas, however, wasn't driven by such ambitions. He was drawn by a different kind of yearning, a longing for something he couldn't quite name, a void he couldn't fill. He'd lost his family, his purpose, and the will to find either. He was a ghost, haunting the edges of a world that had moved on without him. As he stood amidst the bustling crowd, the air thick with the scent of sweat, livestock, and unspoken anxieties, his gaze fell upon a scene that would forever alter the course of his life. A family, a mother and her 5 children, stood huddled on the auction block, their faces etched with a fear that resonated deep within Silas's soul. The mother, her eyes wide with a desperate plea, clutched her children close as if shielding them from the harsh reality that awaited them. The children, ranging in age from toddlers to young teenagers, looked at the crowd with a mixture of confusion and terror, their innocence shattered by the circumstances. This was no ordinary auction lot. It was a family, offered up for sale, their fate hanging precariously in the balance. The auctioneer, a man with a booming voice and a heart of stone, began his chant, the words slicing through the air like a cruel blade. Bids were shouted, the price slowly climbing, each increment a testament to the family's diminishing value. Silas, watching this unfolding tragedy, felt a knot tighten in his chest. He knew the desperation of these people, the fear that gnawed at their souls. He knew, perhaps better than anyone, the crushing weight of loneliness and the desperate need for human connection. He felt the pull of his own past, the memories of what he had lost, and the realization that he didn't want to lose any more. He knew that he would have to make a choice. The question was, could he? Could he step into the arena and change their fate? Could he afford to? Could he handle the responsibility? Could he open his heart, which had been closed for so long? The answers were far from clear, but one thing was certain. The auction had become more than just a place of commerce. It was a battlefield of the soul, and Silas, whether he liked it or not, was about to enter the fray. The auctioneer's voice, a relentless hammer, kept falling, driving the price of the family higher and higher. The crowd, a sea of faces reflecting a myriad of motivations, watched with varying degrees of detachment and concern. Silas stood frozen, a battle raging within him. The auctioneer's chant was a siren song, drawing him closer to a decision that could either save him or utterly destroy him. The price, a cruel measure of their worth, continued to climb. Furthermore, the weight of his own past pressed down on him. He saw in the mother's eyes a reflection of his own wife, a woman whose memory he cherished, but whose absence still cut him to the core. He saw in the children the potential for joy, for laughter, for the kind of familial love he had so tragically lost. The thought of these innocent souls being scattered, their lives splintered by circumstance, was unbearable. He knew the harsh realities of the West, the dangers that lurked in every shadow, and the potential for exploitation and suffering. He could not in good conscience allow this family to face such a fate. Building on this, the auctioneer paused, his eyes scanning the crowd, seeking the next bid. The tension was palpable, a tangible force that seemed to crackle in the air. Silas felt his heart pound in his chest, a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. He knew what he had to do, but the fear held him captive. He was a man of meager means, a solitary figure who had long ago resigned himself to a life of quiet solitude. Could he truly take on the responsibility of a family? Could he provide for them? Could he open himself up to the vulnerability of caring for others again? Another crucial layer is that the other bidders, a motley assortment of hardened ranchers and shrewd businessmen, eyed the family with calculating gazes. Their intentions were unknown, and the thought of these children falling into the wrong hands filled Silas with dread. He saw a glimpse of a man, a burly figure with a scar across his face, who seemed particularly interested. The man's predatory stare sent a chill down Silas's spine. He knew with a certainty that settled deep in his gut that he had to act to protect this family from whatever fate awaited them. Consequently, the auctioneer, sensing the lull in bidding, raised his gavel. "Going once, going twice," he boomed, his voice echoing through the barn. The crowd held its breath, the silence broken only by the nervous shuffling of feet. The moment of decision had arrived. Silas knew that if he didn't act now, it would be too late. The family's future, their very lives, hung in the balance, suspended in the stark reality of the auction. Now consider how this applies when you face a crossroads in your own life. The fear of failure, the weight of responsibility can paralyze us. But sometimes the greatest acts of courage are born not from strength, but from a willingness to confront our own vulnerabilities, to reach out and help those in need, even when it seems impossible. The question was, could Silas overcome his own fear and take a leap of faith? The auctioneer's gavel hovered in the air, a symbol of finality, a harbinger of destinies sealed. Silas, his heart now hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs, felt a surge of defiance. The fear, the doubt, the years of quietude, all of it seemed to melt away, consumed by a sudden burning resolve. It was as if a long-dormant ember within him had been rekindled, igniting a fire of compassion and determination. He knew he couldn't stand idly by. Furthermore, the faces of the children, their vulnerability stark against the harsh backdrop of the auction, became etched in his mind. He saw in their eyes not just fear but a flicker of hope, a silent plea for rescue. He imagined himself years ago a young man with a family of his own, and the ache of loss returned sharper than ever. Remembering the comfort and joy he had once known, he couldn't bear the thought of these children suffering a similar fate. He understood the importance of a family, the solace it provided during times of hardship, and the strength it offered in facing the challenges of life. Building on this, the auctioneer's voice broke the silence. "Going once." Silas took a deep breath, steeling himself. His hand, trembling slightly, rose in the air, signaling his intention to bid. The crowd turned, their gazes shifting from the auctioneer to him, a solitary figure standing against the tide of indifference. A hush fell over the room, and all eyes were on Silas. The burly man with the scar, his face contorted in a mixture of surprise and annoyance, turned to stare at him. Consequently, Silas, finding a strength he didn't know he possessed, spoke. His voice, though rough from disuse, was clear and steady. $20, he announced. The auctioneer, momentarily taken aback, recovered quickly. $20, do I hear 25? The bidding resumed, the price inching upward. Silas found himself locked in a silent battle of wills with the other bidders, each increment a test of his resolve. He didn't have much money, but he had something far more valuable, the unwavering conviction that he was doing the right thing. Another crucial layer is that the other bidders, sensing Silas's determination, began to drop out one by one. The burly man, his face darkening with frustration, made a final bid of $35. Silas paused, weighing his options. He could back down, allowing the family to be sold to a stranger, or he could continue, potentially bankrupting himself. He looked at the mother, her eyes pleading, and knew what he had to do. With a deep breath, he raised his hand again. $40, he declared, his voice firm. Conversely, the auctioneer, sensing the end was near, called out, $40, going once, going twice. The crowd held its breath, anticipating the final outcome. The burly man, his face a mask of defeat, shook his head and turned away. The silence hung heavy in the air. Then, with a resounding crack, the auctioneer's gavel fell. "Sold," he announced, his voice echoing through the barn. "Sold to the gentleman in the back." The family's fate was now sealed, and Silas was now responsible. Now consider how this applies when you are confronted with a difficult decision, a moment where you must choose between personal comfort and the well-being of others. The easier path is often to look away, to remain silent, to avoid getting involved. But sometimes, the most meaningful moments in life are those where we step forward, where we take a risk, where we choose to make a difference, even when the odds are stacked against us. Silas had made a choice, and in that moment, he had found a strength he never knew he had. The immediate aftermath of the gavel's fall was a whirlwind of emotions, a maelstrom of shock and disbelief. The crowd, previously a judgmental gallery, now buzzed with a mixture of speculation and admiration. The auctioneer, a man accustomed to the cold calculus of profit, seemed genuinely surprised by Silas's actions. The family, however, was the epicenter of this emotional storm. The mother, overcome with a mixture of relief and apprehension, stumbled forward, her eyes searching for Silas, her face a mask of gratitude and uncertainty. The children, initially stunned into silence, began to stir, their fear slowly giving way to a tentative hope. Furthermore, the weight of his sudden responsibility settled upon Silas. He had purchased a family, a concept he hadn't even considered just moments before. He was no longer just a lonely widower. He was now the guardian of 6 souls, a role for which he was utterly unprepared. The practicalities of the situation crashed upon him like a tidal wave. Where would they live? How would he provide for them? Could he possibly meet their needs? The simplicity of his solitary life had vanished in an instant, replaced by a complex web of obligations and uncertainties. Building on this, Silas, taking a deep breath to steady himself, began to navigate the chaos. He approached the family, his steps hesitant but determined. The mother, her eyes brimming with tears, reached out a trembling hand as if to touch the face of her savior. Silas, though unused to such displays of emotion, met her gesture, offering a reassuring smile. "It's all right," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're safe now." His words, though simple, carried the weight of a promise, a vow to protect them from the hardships they had faced. Consequently, the children, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, began to cautiously approach. The youngest, a small girl with wide, innocent eyes, clung to her mother's skirts, her face a picture of vulnerability. The older children, their faces still bearing the marks of their ordeal, looked at Silas with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. One of the older boys, perhaps 10 years old, stepped forward, his voice barely a whisper. What will happen now? The question hung in the air, a plea for reassurance, a yearning for a better future. Silas, recognizing the depth of their uncertainty, knew that his actions would now define their future. Another crucial layer is the unspoken understanding that passed between Silas and the family. It was a connection forged in the crucible of shared hardship, a silent acknowledgement of their mutual vulnerability. The mother, whose name was Sarah, introduced herself and her children, Thomas, the eldest, Mary, the next in line, and the younger ones, John, Lily, and little Samuel. Silas, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of names, realized that his life had irrevocably changed. He was no longer just Silas, he was now their Silas. A guardian, a provider, a beacon of hope in a world that had often seemed devoid of it. Conversely, the practical challenges loomed large. Silas, with a profound sense of responsibility, knew that he had to act quickly. He approached the auctioneer to complete the transaction, securing the necessary paperwork. Then he turned to the family and, with a simple gesture, invited them to follow him. The journey from the auction house to Silas's modest cabin was a significant one, a symbolic passage from despair to the possibility of a new beginning. The children, clutching their meager belongings, walked alongside Silas, their steps tentative, their hearts filled with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Now consider how this applies when you are faced with a daunting challenge, a situation that seems overwhelming. The temptation is often to retreat, to avoid the responsibility, to allow fear to dictate your actions. But Silas's experience shows that even the most seemingly insurmountable obstacles can be overcome with courage, compassion, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. It is in those moments of profound vulnerability that we often discover our greatest strength. The journey back to Silas's cabin, a humble dwelling on the outskirts of town, was a watershed moment, a physical manifestation of the radical shift in their lives. The children, initially subdued, began to display signs of cautious curiosity as they walked. The landscape, though familiar to Silas, now took on a new dimension, imbued with the promise of fresh beginnings. The sun, once a relentless judge, now seemed to cast a gentler light, a subtle encouragement for the family to embrace the unknown. Furthermore, the simple act of providing for them became Silas's primary focus. His meager pantry was soon to be depleted, and he knew that he would need to venture out and secure more provisions. This meant a trip into town, a task fraught with both practical challenges and emotional complexities. He had to find work, make arrangements for the children's care, and navigate the social landscape, which was sure to be filled with both curiosity and judgment. He understood that integrating a family into his solitary life would take time, patience, and a willingness to adapt. Building on this, the interior of the cabin, once a stark reflection of Silas's solitude, now transformed into a hive of activity. The children, accustomed to the harsh realities of their previous existence, were initially hesitant to settle in. The youngest, Lily, seemed to cling to her mother, as if afraid to let go of the only security she had known. Silas, understanding their apprehension, made an effort to create a welcoming atmosphere. He cleaned the cabin, making room for the children's belongings, and tried to make the space feel warm and inviting. Consequently, the simple act of sharing a meal became a ritual of connection. Silas, accustomed to eating alone, now prepared a shared supper, a meager feast of beans, bread, and whatever vegetables he could scrounge. The children, their initial shyness melting away, began to share stories, their laughter echoing through the cabin. The mother, Sarah, a woman of quiet strength, helped with the chores, her presence transforming the space. Silas, observing this scene, felt a sense of belonging, a feeling he had not experienced in years. Another crucial layer is that the community's reaction to Silas's actions was mixed. Some townsfolk, hardened by the harsh realities of the West, viewed his act with suspicion. They questioned his motives, whispering about his sanity and the potential burden he had taken upon himself. Others, however, were touched by his compassion. They offered assistance, providing food, clothing, and even a helping hand with the chores. Silas learned the true value of community, the power of human kindness to overcome adversity. Conversely, the emotional healing was a slow, often painful process. The children carried the scars of their past, the memories of hardship and loss. Nightmares haunted their sleep, and their eyes often reflected a lingering fear. Silas, lacking any formal training, relied on his intuition and a willingness to listen. He spent hours with them, listening to their stories, offering comfort, and slowly helping them to process their trauma. He understood that the scars of the heart run deep and that healing takes time. Now consider how this applies when you face a crisis, a moment where you feel overwhelmed by the challenges ahead. The temptation is to retreat, to allow fear to paralyze you, but Silas's experience shows that even the most daunting situations can be transformed through acts of compassion, community, and an unwavering commitment to the well-being of others. It is in these moments of profound vulnerability that we discover the true measure of our humanity. Furthermore, the task of creating a semblance of normalcy within the cabin became a monumental undertaking. Silas, used to the solitude of his existence, found himself grappling with the constant presence of 6 individuals, each with unique needs, personalities, and emotional baggage. It was a jarring transition, a shift from a life of self-reliance to one demanding constant attention, empathy, and the ability to navigate the complexities of human relationships. He had to learn to listen, to understand, and to respond to the needs of the children, who were at different stages of development and had different temperaments. Building on this, practical challenges began to surface, testing Silas's resourcefulness. The cabin, designed for one, was now bursting at the seams. Space was limited, privacy non-existent, and the simple act of providing sustenance became a daily struggle. He had to expand his garden, find ways to improve his hunting skills, and explore alternative sources of income to provide for his newfound family. The responsibility weighed heavily on him, but he pressed on, driven by his commitment to ensuring their survival. Consequently, the children, who had previously known only hardship, began to slowly embrace their new reality. The initial fear began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious optimism. They started to explore the surroundings of the cabin, discovering the wonders of nature and the simple joys of childhood. The older children, Thomas and Mary, took on responsibilities, helping with the chores, assisting in the garden, and offering support to their younger siblings. Lily, once the most hesitant, started to warm up to Silas, her initial apprehension giving way to a hesitant trust. Another crucial layer is the importance of education within the family. Silas, who had received little formal schooling himself, understood the value of knowledge. He made an effort to teach the children to read and write, using whatever resources he could find. He encouraged their curiosity, answering their questions and sharing his limited knowledge of the world. He envisioned a future for them that was not defined by their past, a future where they could make their own choices and pursue their own dreams. Conversely, the emotional scars of their past continued to resurface, often in unexpected ways. Nightmares, flashbacks, and moments of intense sadness were frequent occurrences. Silas, with his limited understanding of psychology, did his best to support them. He offered comfort, listened without judgment, and encouraged them to express their feelings. He learned to recognize the signs of distress, to provide reassurance, and to create a safe space where they could heal. Now consider how this applies when you are tasked with a new responsibility, a challenge that demands you to step outside of your comfort zone. The temptation might be to become overwhelmed, to give in to self-doubt, or to retreat into the familiar. However, Silas's experiences show that embracing the unknown, confronting the challenges head-on, and remaining committed to the well-being of others can lead to unexpected growth, resilience, and the discovery of one's true potential. It's in the act of striving that we often find our greatest strengths. As the threads of this narrative intertwine, a tapestry of profound transformation emerges, one woven with threads of loss, courage, and the resilient spirit of humanity. We've witnessed the stark realities of a society teetering on the brink, where desperation and vulnerability were commodities traded in the cold light of day. Yet amidst the shadows of such hardship, a flicker of hope ignited, fueled by an unexpected act of compassion. Drawing these threads together, we see how the decision to embrace the unknown, to step into the abyss of uncertainty, had a ripple effect that redefined lives. This act, a solitary gesture of defiance against the prevailing currents of self-interest, became a catalyst for change. It wasn't merely the purchase of a family, it was the forging of a new beginning, a testament to the power of empathy in a world often defined by its indifference. The initial act of intervention, the leap of faith, became a beacon, illuminating a path towards redemption. In light of these insights, the path forward becomes clearer. We've journeyed through the trials faced, the emotional landscapes navigated. We've seen how the simple act of extending a hand, of offering shelter and care, can blossom into a testament of resilience. This story is not just about survival. It's about the reawakening of the human spirit, the rediscovery of purpose in the face of profound loss. The gradual unfolding of trust, the tentative steps towards healing, became a testament to the enduring capacity for love and connection. As we pivot towards the final reflection, consider the profound impact of this transformation. It's not just about the individuals involved, it's about the broader implications for our understanding of human nature, the choices we make, and the legacy we leave behind. The struggles faced, the obstacles overcome, are reflected in the strength of the human bond. The emergence of a new family from the ashes of despair echoes in the heart of this story. This journey, from the auction block to the cabin door, serves as a mirror reflecting the inherent capacity for change within each of us. The willingness to confront our own limitations, to embrace vulnerability, and to extend a hand to those in need creates a powerful force. The narrative has demonstrated that transformation is possible. It's not always easy, and it's rarely straightforward, but it is always within reach. Reflecting on this journey so far, we can see how a single act of kindness can resonate through the years. The tale of Silas and the family he purchased at auction transcends the confines of a historical anecdote. It resonates as a profound meditation on the human condition. It is a story of redemption, of the transformative power of empathy, and of the enduring capacity of the human spirit to find solace and purpose even in the darkest of times. It is a gentle reminder that within each of us lies the potential for profound change, the ability to rewrite the narrative of our lives, and the capacity to extend a hand to those who are lost. Silas, the lonely widower, did not seek to become a hero. He was driven by a simple yet profound impulse to alleviate the suffering of others. His act of purchasing the family was not a calculated decision, but a spontaneous response to the injustice he witnessed. It was a moment of pure humanity, a testament to the belief that every life has value and that every soul deserves a chance at happiness. His actions, though initially driven by compassion, would ultimately become the catalyst for a profound transformation, not only for the family, but for himself. As we reflect on their shared journey, we recognize that the true measure of a life lies not in material wealth or social standing, but in the impact we have on the lives of others. Silas, by embracing vulnerability and opening his heart to the needs of the family, found a purpose that had eluded him for years. He discovered the joy of connection, the solace of companionship, and the profound satisfaction of knowing that he had made a difference in the world. The story's enduring power lies in its universality. It speaks to the innate human need for belonging, for connection, and for a sense of purpose. It reminds us that we are all interconnected, that our lives are intertwined, and that our actions have consequences that extend far beyond our immediate surroundings. The struggles faced, the obstacles overcome, and the bonds forged within the walls of that humble cabin are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The auction was not merely a place of commerce, it was a crucible where destinies were forged. Silas, once adrift in a sea of solitude, found himself responsible for the well-being of 6 souls. He met the challenge head-on, and in doing so, he discovered a strength he never knew he possessed. The transformation was not immediate, nor was it easy. It was a process of healing, of adaptation, and of unwavering commitment to the well-being of others. The true practice begins now, in the reflection of the past, and in the courageous act of choosing empathy over indifference.